deals, right? You know what I mean? The shop's already running at an industry average. Now, does that mean that AJ couldn't go back there and we couldn't find some little thing to tweak that might move this thing by 0.2%? Sure. But chances are, if your material profit's not where you want to be and your expense to sale is running in this area, it's an office problem, not a shop problem, most likely, right? Make sense? Okay. So, any questions on that stuff? We pretty good so far?
Real quick, Greg.
Yes, sir.
Just quick housekeeping. Since there's the amount of us that's in here, probably the easiest way. There's a deli across the street, right? You know,
like
across
right
the
here?
hallway right here.
Yeah.
I sent you an email with the menu, or if we want, we can just pick a time, walk over there, everyone can order, and then do it that way.
We can just do that. Right?
Okay. Yeah. Whenever you want
Everybody?
to do that, then we can just walk over and place an
I
order.
mean, it's
and
like
go from
right there, right there.
It's literally right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay.
So, it's 11. Do y'all need to take a quick break, or should I keep rolling? We good?
I just need to get some water.
Go ahead. I talked about that. So sharing the ratios with the staff, that impacts them, right? I'm a big believer in that. I've got a lot of shop owners that I consult that are like, oh, I'm not going to share my numbers with anybody. To me, that doesn't make sense. Again, I'm not telling you to go share your rent expense or, any of that kind of stuff with them, but if you want to move gross profit numbers, share that with your team. They'll help you with that, I promise you. Even though there's some of us in here who think, oh, Johnny doesn't give two shits about that number. Well, he does if he's in last place. Trust me, Have you ever walked up to anything? I used to tell this story to people. You go into whatever schoolyard there is somewhere around here and you got some kids out there playing a basketball game. I promise you, if you walk up to those kids and say, hey man, what's the score? They are going to tell you what the score is. They are not out there, unless they grew up in the age of a trophy for everyone. They're keeping score. You know what I mean? So why in God's name wouldn't we keep score at our store? Makes sense, does it not? We got kids keeping score on pickup basketball games, but we can't keep score at the collision center. Doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So real quick, all this is really showing you is a good benchmark for allied products is not to exceed 33% of your total material costs. Has everybody heard that before? So what we're saying there is the breakdown from liquid to allied is basically 70-30. Has everybody heard that number before? You definitely don't want to go anywhere past about 35% on allied, or you're most likely wasting allied, right? So all this ratio tells you is if you jumped in here and you were 80-20, right? Something's awry, you know what I mean? It doesn't really tell you where to look, quite honestly, because it's a percent to sale number. All it tells you is that, hey, we've got a problem, right? That's no different, quite honestly, than looking at a high front end hit, right? And noticing that the front end is shifted over because you're looking at the gaps between the hood and the fender. You're like, hey, something's wrong. But you can't tell what you need to do just because the gap is wrong, right? You have to dig further. It's the same thing. It's just a visual indicator, right? It's like, hey, man, our ratio's screwed up. Why is that? Is it because we're using too much liquid, or is it because we're not using enough allied, or is it a combo thing, right? So it's just something that tells you that you're not really on target. The other thing in your book that it shows is a 2-to-1 ratio, which is kind of a more archaic way of looking at it, but it still works, right? So if you were to take those two numbers, like it shows you on page 24, if your ratio is less than a 2-to-1, then something's awry. You know what I mean? Something's not clicking. Okay. So there's that. So let's talk about cost per production employee. A lot of shops use this KPI to help manage their. I personally don't spend a lot of time on this myself. I'm much more percent to sale, expense to sale. I like to look at how many hours they're producing, right? But this is viable as well, right? So who are your production employees at your store? I'm not going to make y'all answer that. The only one that's on that list that's not part of production is your estimator, okay? The one that people tend to forget a lot about is any kind of apprentice or a detail technician. They are production. They are not overhead wage. They are part of your production. Detail people miss all the time because we're probably paying them a salary or hour. But if you're going to look at this number, they have to be considered part of your production. And it makes sense why they are to everybody, right? They are part of the production. Yeah, it has. It's a production thing, right? So those are our people that are part of production. The only reason I wanted to clarify that with you real quick is because if you want to look at this KPI, you have to have that number right. You know what I mean? Or you're not going to have it accounted for properly. So in this case, this example, 6 body techs, 1 painter, 2 preppers, and a detail tech gives us a total of 10 production technicians. We've got monthly purchases in 10K with our 10 production, gives us 1,000 per production employee, and that is our target. Does that make sense? So if you're running, and then as it says there, if you just wanted to do paint only, which is another viable way to look at this, employee by production employee or just by paint team member, that number should be around 3K. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so again, it's not going to tell you what to fix, but it's really easy way to look to see if you're off the average, right? Easy math too, for dumb old high school educated body shop managers like myself. You know. So, any questions on that one? We good? So we're going to show you how to calculate average paint material cost per refinish hour. So it's really just that. That is one good thing about this book, y'all. And like I told you before, there is a page in here where I think it gets all of these calculations onto one page. Look, they're not rocket science calculations. I would probably argue with y'all that I probably look at this stuff a lot more than anybody else in this room does. I still refer back to the calculation page, just so you know. And they're easy calculations. It's just that when you're, you know what I mean? When you're in the middle of it, it's nice to have something to reference back to and just say, oh, okay, that's how I get to that number, right? We do have people that work at AXO, like Tim Ronick, who wrote this class, that probably doesn't refer to anything because he's a financial major guru. But it's okay to be like me and refer back to the calculation, you know what I'm saying? So there's your target is $10 per refinish hour, right? So if you do that calculation and you're looking at cost per refinish hour, which I will tell you, I like looking at cost per refinish hour. That's a good number to look at, right? So, you know, keep that one in the back of your head. Okay. So paint budgeting and Mix It Pro. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Mix It Pro because I'm not a Mix It Pro expert. Matter of fact, these guys probably know more about Mix It Pro than I do. So I'm not. But I'll tell you from a 30,000-foot view what it can do. Right. So real quick. So the paint budgeting worksheet is a worksheet that someone at AXO created. We can get this tool to you, right? If you so choose to implement it. It's not a rocket science tool. But all you basically do, and I know it's probably hard to see, though I think you probably see it in your book a little bit better, but it's a projection thing because it's a budgeting tool, right? So for this tool to work, you have to stay on top of the tool, okay? So because you're making a guesstimate, right? So if you look at this thing, where the yellow is, you have to put numbers in, right? So it's asking for your projected sales, right? And we can always project at the beginning of the month, but sometimes shit happens, right? Sometimes we get busier than what we thought we were going to be, and sometimes, you know, it slows down when we didn't expect it or whatever. So you really, to make a budget tool work, you have to adjust it every week, right? Does that make sense? So because you've got to change that projected sales number, or you're either A, going to buy too much stuff, or you're not going to buy enough stuff. Either one of those are not good, right? So budget tools are great, but if you're stepping over $1 to pick up a penny and you're running out of shit in the paint shop and cars aren't getting painted because you're out of shit, then that is not helping you at all, right? That's not a good program. One-offing all of your paint material into your shop is not smart, right? It just isn't, because you end up with downtime. And And I will tell you this, if your booths aren't cranking, then you ain't making any money in your paint shop, right? I walk into paint shops all the time and I have owners tell me, man, I need another paint booth, but then I look at their paint booth and there ain't shit bacon in there. No one's spraying nothing in there, right? So, if your booth is to the point where you're turning it 6 times a day, right? 4 to 6, okay? And it's in constant motion and you're still not getting everything painted that you need to, okay, then let's talk. If I walk into your store and your booth is just sitting there stagnant, chances are, well, you're not utilizing the booth to its full potential. Let's get that handled first and find out if you need it. But a lot of owners are like, oh, I want a booth, because that's going to be the magic bean that fixes everything, and it's not. It's a process issue. It's not a booth issue, right? Does that make sense? So, but anyway, you can pop these numbers in here, right? And if you're keeping up with these KPIs, you do have to know your paint labor as a percent to total sale for this tool to work. That's not a very difficult number to get to, by the way. These percent to sale numbers are pretty easy, and the calculations are in this book. But you can put all of this stuff in here, right? And by doing that, it's going to come back and tell you what your budget is for liquid and for allied. And as the month goes on and invoices come in from UYL and you input them into there, it's going to tell you whether you're on pace or you're not on pace. Does that make sense? But it will get real jacked up real fast if you've got your projected sales of 150K, but you're really on pace to run 200K. Or vice versa, right? Does that make sense to everybody? So it's a really good tool. People who use it, they use it in their paint shop with their painters and their paint team, right? It's not so much a manager's thing, even though you can be controlling it, right? But it is something you share with them and say, hey guys, here's where we're at. And it helps them manage, what they're purchasing, right? What I don't want people to do, or I don't want you to do to your painter is have them not buy something that they need because we're off, because we've hit our budget already. You know what I mean? Because we don't want to stop a car. Well, I can't buy any more stuff, so this car's going to stay here. That doesn't make any sense, right? But so you just got to be smart, So, but the Mix-It Pro, again, I'm no expert on Mix-It. What I will tell you about Mix-It is there's a lot of good reporting that comes out of Mix-It. If you are not forcing your painter to mix across the scale and you haven't taken the sticks and cans and crap out of your shop, right? I'm sure there's somebody here that would argue with me. Probably a painter, so I don't have a painter in here right now. Don't take my sticks, But you got to mix across the scale. If you mix across the scale, now I can job cost, right? Mix-It Pro can be set up where it actually pumps information into your office from Mix-It Pro. If your painter mixes across the scale, you can actually job cost by RO. So you can look and see if there's some special toner that went on this car, which by the way, there's more and more special toners now every day. And some of them are crazy expensive, So you've got to know, I mean, if you're, I had a shop the other day that ordered some $800 toner in the paint shop. My distributor just delivered it to them. This wasn't the other day, it was longer than that. And they never invoiced the car for the $800 toner that they purchased. That wasn't on their bank, it was a specialty toner, right? So as an ex-body shop manager, I would never let that happen in my shop, right? Like if my painter was gonna order something off the reservation, he would call me and say, hey dude, I got this toner, it's not on my bank, what the F? And I'm like, oh no, let's call. That's a $1,000 toner. Someone tell State Farm they're about to get a supplement, you know what I mean? Like seriously. So that mixing across the scale and that job costing up front makes sense. If you ever start doing that on every job, you'll come to find out that your bumper jobs you make very little money on. On a specialty toner car, you will make no money if you don't.
Talking about my shop?
Any shop. No, it's in general, not your shop.
No, I'm saying the story you were just saying.
Oh, was that your story?
That was our story. Right?
No, it wasn't your store. So see, I got a real life. That happened to you, huh?
Twice in 1 week.
Oh, nice.
Two specialty toners.
I had no
How much was it?
No, this was a Dallas store.
It was like almost 1,000,
Yeah.
12.
Well, they have one. There's a new Toyota color on those new
Yeah.
high-end Toyotas, and AXO put out a release on it, and it's straight ready to mix. For you to mix it out, it comes out at $183 per gram to mix out.
Ouch.
So yeah, I've never seen anything that high, but it's only on 200 cars.
Yeah,
Or
it's
something.
it's the Lexus.
It's that
Oh,
like
it's that
90
blue Lexus.
It's that blue
Yeah,
Lexus.
yeah,
Lexus
yeah.
that is
You'll
a
never see
nightmare
that
for
car.
everybody.
Park Place hasn't even seen that car yet.
There's only like 200 of them, and
In
they're
the country.
$90,000 plus car, but it's some sort of pigment with the hummingbird or
But
It should
be. What do they call that? I've seen a whole damn presentation on that color, and I
Yeah.
shot the guy after. I was like, really? We just spent that much time talking about one damn color? But if anybody knows, I don't even like paint, quite honestly. It's just a necessary evil that I had to have to run my collision center. So working for a global paint company is kind of almost funny for me, right? You know, I have to sit through these AXO meetings, and these fools, they love paint. They really do. And they will talk about paint until you just can't take it anymore, you know? And, but Mazda color, I